Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello, welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my guest is Jacob Silver. Jacob is a bankruptcy attorney in New York, and he evaluates your financial situation and helps you get rid of dischargeable debt that you're unable to pay. He'll help ensure that you receive the fresh start that you deserve so that you can move forward with your life and focus on your job and on your family without the stress that debt collectors can bring. Jacob Silver, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's Jacob Silver. Pleasure to speak with you, Neil.
Well, we're in kind of unfamiliar territory right now. We're right in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. And, you know, we talk about what you do for people is relieving some of that stress that debt collectors can cause. And it looks like there's going to be a whole bunch of that in the near future. So really looking forward to getting some answers from you and some tips on what best to do. But before we get started, Jacob, give us a little bit of a background into yourself and how you got going as a bankruptcy attorney.
Sure. That's actually an interesting question. I've been practicing bankruptcy law for at least 25 years, and throughout that time, I've helped thousands of individuals, businesses, either reorganize or get rid of their debt and really get a fresh start, which is so important. Be as that may, we're really going through today under really uncharted waters. I mean, I've been through a lot of recessions, and I've seen what that does to people. It's terrible. And I can tell you, I've never seen anything like what we're seeing today. I can tell you I'm in a building with about 24 floors, hundreds of attorneys. And the only person I met was I saw the cleaning lady. And I'm like, yes. I said, who's in the building? She said, it's just you and me. Wow. So, I mean, basically, law firms are closed for an indeterminate period of time. Other small businesses are closed. They don't know when they're going to open. And most troublesome to me, which I haven't seen so much before, a little bit after 9/11, is this fear. You have this just pure fear out there. And I think that's very troublesome for small businesses because in other recessions I've seen in the past, when you work with small businesses, you could say, look, for example, you sell a donut usually for $2. So what you do is you can cut the price down to $1, try to make up some volume, keep your business afloat in that way. But with fear and the fear that's out there, I don't think cutting your price will matter. It's not going to help people or convince them to come into your business. So I think we haven't really seen the full extent of it yet. This is just the beginning of it. We're dealing with, I guess people are dealing with the medical parts of it. They don't want to die. So what's going to happen to business is in the backseat on people's minds for now. But I think in the medium and perhaps longer term, I think it's going to be far more troublesome. And it's going to be more of a downturn than in prior recessions. So we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, I will tell you, people in general, even in my office, they're concerned about their own safety. They really don't want to come down and talk about a bankruptcy. This is more of a core fear, a fear about whether you're going to die. I mean, I think that's what's in people's minds. So other issues are taking a back seat.
Well, the fear really is driving it. And unfortunately, the media is really playing into that as well. Every conversation that I have with people nowadays is it involves the coronavirus. I mean, that's the only thing that everybody is talking about because it has such widespread impact. Now, you said we're just at the start of this. How long do you think this can last before, either the economy as we know it collapses or we get back to normal?
It's a good question. I would say it seems that we won't. And I'm speaking from New York. So basically, in New York, I think they think the worst of it will be in the next 2 weeks. But the question is, when does the fear subside and people go back to normal? When do they go back to their jobs, if those jobs are still there for them? And that would be that's going to take some time. So you figure at least a few weeks for the medical part to get through that, and then maybe another month or two for people to start being able to get back to work. But what's so troublesome of that is, and I've worked with a lot of small businesses in the past, the problem is, and this is really a country of small businesses, right? It's just such a great country, and you have so many people just working to build their own businesses. This is their dream. I mean, people work. They open up a store, they put their blood and their sweat into it. Any kind of business today, they work at it. But the problem is, a lot of these small businesses really have liquidity issues. They've never really thought, probably haven't even thought about this type of a shutdown where you're closed for weeks, a month or two, and they don't have the capital. So the problem you're going to have with a lot of small businesses is that they're going to be closed for like a month or two. They'll probably lay off most of their employees, if not all of them. And even if you say, okay, in 2-3 months, open up, but wait a minute, now the landlord's in trouble. He has his own problems because probably as a tenant you haven't paid your rent. And a lot of small businesses, even though it's not the right thing to do, they hold back like on sales tax that they're supposed to send into the state. And they kind of get themselves into a hole trying to survive. I mean, this is about survival of your business. It's personal. People are trying to do the right thing, but they're suffering. So the real problem is, if they're closed for 2 or 3 months, a lot of these small businesses just don't have the capital to open. And there are going to be a lot of very difficult conversations between small businesses, their landlords, their suppliers, really in, I think, an unprecedented way where you hope that everyone's going to come to the table and recognize the greater good of keeping these small businesses alive and giving them a lifeline where they can maybe pay back past rent over time, where maybe the state won't come and just seize your assets if you're really behind on your sales tax or other taxes. You hope everyone will come to the table in good faith to keep these businesses alive so that they can keep their employees and generate revenue into the future, because that's really what supports the cities, the states, and whatnot. So, even before thinking about bankruptcy, the question is really what type of bankruptcy a lot of these small businesses and individuals need. And so I think I'll get into that. But actually, I'll tell you, we'll go back to actually how I first decided to go into bankruptcy. And I'll tell you, I was representing. This is a little bit of a happier story. I was representing someone who, and I was dealing with a credit card company. She had come into my office, and I was really just representing her in civil court. This goes back like, I don't know, almost 30, probably closer to 27 years ago. And she owed money. I think it was to one of the big credit card companies. And so I went down to civil court, and I said, look, I think she owed about $7,000-8,000, and I told the creditor, I said, listen, all she has is about $1,000. I said, well, I'll give you a choice. Either we'll give you $1,000 and we'll settle this credit card debt, and you take that as in full amount, as full payment, or I'll probably just use it, and between the court fee and me, we'll just file for bankruptcy and get rid of your debt. And what was interesting is, the credit card company, the attorney said, oh, no, we can't do that. We need either you pay like 80% in a lump sum, or you pay 100% over like 4 months or so. And I said, that's ridiculous. You couldn't even work with them. And I think that's what a lot of consumers get when they go to civil court. They find that they're being sued. There's an aggressive collection agency, an aggressive law firm suing them. And it's very difficult to work out something with them, even though that working out a resolution is probably in the best interest of the consumer and the creditor. And in the end, in this particular case, we couldn't work out any agreement, so I filed bankruptcy for her. It was a single mother with 2 children. And then it's funny, the credit card company, the attorney called me up and said, oh, we see your bankruptcy, we want to work something out. And I said, that makes totally no sense to me. Now we're getting rid of this debt without paying anything. Shouldn't have to pay back anything, which is really what happens in almost all the bankruptcy cases. The debtor, the person who files bankruptcy, doesn't have to pay back anything to their creditors.
Right.
But what was so amazed me was that I just saw the power of what the bankruptcy code can do. That here was someone being harassed, being chased after, the danger of her salary being garnished, her bank accounts frozen, and here with using the bankruptcy code, I could just get rid of this person's debts without much stress. One quick court appearance. And when I saw the good that I could do with this, I said, "This is for me. This is where I belong," because it's not you're really helping people. When you get rid of someone's debts, you just see a difference in that person. I mean, I've seen people. I remember during the last recession, you would see professionals who had good jobs, and they would come into my office, and you saw that as the recession continued, you'd see a change in the person. You would see that they were stressed. The stress was wearing them down. They wouldn't shave. They were just like suffering. They were in a depression. And then when you would help get rid of their debts, it would totally change them. They would feel that they had turned the corner, that they had gotten rid of their debts, that now they could focus on their family, on getting a job, and improving their situation. Because that's what bankruptcy does.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great service, and obviously you offer hope. And we said in the introduction, you offer a fresh start to people, and that gives them hope. And as you said, it changes their appearance, their attitude, and everything. And they have that, American dream again is to get out there and make it with renewed energy. Now, looking again at the situation that we're in right now, there is hope maybe with this stimulus package. No, the market seems to think so. It had a bit of an upturn yesterday. But what do you think this stimulus package, which is very, very close to getting passed now today,
right.
What do you think that's going to do for, first talk about the individuals with, some individual checks, and then we'll go on to the business after that.
Excellent. I think you really used the key word, and the key word is hope. Because in many ways, bankruptcy is an act of hope. The person who's filing has to believe that by filing that they will be able to turn things around in their lives and improve their lives. If there's no hope, people won't even file for bankruptcy because they don't need a bankruptcy. They'll sit in their basement and that's it. So the question really in the future is, are people going to have hope? And I think this stimulus is an attempt to give people that hope and to financially assist them so that they can have hope, they can keep their jobs, and they can go forward. So we can talk a little bit about the stimulus and what I think it'll do. And certainly the market has been going up. But to me, the market's like a bipolar individual. It's up one day, it's down, just on news. But I think there's a bigger story than that. The first issue is, what are the job losses going to be? And I think we're going to learn that soon when the job loss numbers come out. My guess is that the small businesses are going to be laying off a tremendous number of workers. And it's not because they're bad. It's not because they're greedy. It's because they're trying to survive. I mean, they've got to lay people off because they can't make payroll.
Right.
So you're going to have a lot of job losses. And so this stimulus, it'll give people a few $1,000s. And the real problem is that if someone doesn't have a job, what is a couple of $1,000s going to do for them? I mean, look, it'll hold off worse times for a few weeks, maybe a week, 2 weeks. But the real problem and the real question is, what's going to happen to the fear? Because if people are still scared, and this isn't like an economic fear, it's a medical fear, and I've never seen anything like that. But if you have a medical fear where people are afraid to go, and even to go to work. I mean, I spoke to actually the mail person came to my office, and she said there's no mail today because 30 people in her office didn't show up. So if people, and those are of course federal employees that are probably going to get paid anyway, but if people aren't if people aren't showing up to their jobs because they're afraid, and customers aren't coming to the stores because they're afraid, what is, this stimulus, I think, is just is not gonna have the multiplier effect, the priming the pump effect, if as I think the Keynesians would say, that it should have, because I don't think I don't think there's anything you can do to encourage people to go out other than what they need, the basic food items. So I think this will have some help. If you're going to drop money from helicopters in people's homes and give them the $1,500 or so, maybe depending if you have children, a little more, it'll help. But it may keep people from starving. But is this going to help a small business? Is this going to help the economy over the next couple of months? I mean, if we're in lockdown, as parts of the country are, or things get worse in New York as they're telling us it will be, and I don't know if it will be as bad as what they say, but as you point out, you can talk the economy into a recession, and maybe some of that's political, maybe it's factual, but the conversation is about how bad this is going to be and how many people are going to die. So if you can't function with people going to work and creating wealth, whether for their employer, for themselves, or whatnot, I think the stimulus will come and it'll go. But I don't think it'll really change the facts on the ground, as it wouldn't, let's say, in a regular recession, in another recession.
Right.
We've seen other
what about for the businesses? Is there enough money there for them to dig themselves back out and start hiring people again and getting production going?
So for businesses, now there's really two different groups. You have the businesses, you have individuals who could file for bankruptcy, I guess, or of course the businesses. But in some ways they're related, because a lot of these small businesses, they may think, look, I want to reorganize my business. That's one of the options you have under, let's say, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But the other thing you need to know is that a lot of these businesses, a lot of their debts have personal guarantees, and it actually comes as a surprise to some individuals. They come in, my business failed, so I don't think I really owe anything personally. But then you point out that those credit cards, when you get a business and you apply for a credit card, it may say the name of your business on the credit card. But but the credit card companies aren't stupid. They're not just giving you credit. You're signing a personal guarantee on that. So the question A is, can you reorganize your business? And B, are they going to come after me personally for some of these personal guarantees? Also, such as sales tax, you might be personally liable for in your state. So the problem is going to be this. So you're going to have small businesses. They're probably going to come and say, look, I don't have the customers. I want to survive. I want to file a bankruptcy. The issue you're going to have is, if they're going to file a Chapter 11 to reorganize, you really, a Chapter 11 is designed for taking care of a problem, but you still have to have revenue, and you still have to basically be able to pay your expenses. So a Chapter 11 is really ideal for, like, a business comes in and says, look, I have 3 locations. 2 are doing okay. The third is killing me. I signed this real estate lease, $20,000 a month. I can't pay that lease. But if I get rid of that location, I can do pretty well in the other locations. That's that type, or I was sued. They got sued over something. They have, like, some unusual event that affected them. So there you could reorganize them. You can get rid of that location, get out of that lease, and the company can be profitable. The problem is, if you're not selling, if you don't have enough revenue to cover your regular expenses, what's going to happen in a bankruptcy is the bankruptcy court's going to liquidate your business, because they're going to do what's in the best interest of creditors, which is kind of one of the standards in a bankruptcy. So if you file a Chapter 11 as a small business, and you're really not selling because it's not your fault, the customers just aren't coming, you're going to have bankruptcy may not be the answer for you in terms of reorganizing. You may not be able to reorganize because under the new normal, it may not be a viable business. So that's that issue. For individuals, the Chapter 7 is there. I mean, it's called a liquidation, but in reality, almost all clients just are able to keep all their assets, get rid of their debts, get a fresh start. And that's because in New York, and I'm only speaking about the exemptions in New York, they're very generous. I mean, each individual in a bankruptcy can have, let's say, can get rid of their debts and still keep a house with each debtor, which are usually it's a husband and wife. Each one can have about $172,000 of equity in their home. So a married couple can have about $345,000 in equity in their home. Plus, they can keep all their retirement plans. They're generally a car. And all their household belongings. So, I mean, pretty much I would say about like 95% of people off the bat don't have any problems filing a Chapter 7 and keeping their assets, assuming they qualify financially in terms of their income. There are income limitations in bankruptcy, and I think really it's a good time for Congress to think about changing some of those limitations to make it easier for people to file bankruptcy, to get rid of their debts without going through some of the rigmarole that they put into place back in 2005 when they changed the bankruptcy law, which made it more complicated for an individual to file bankruptcy. It didn't really change much. I mean, pretty much most people really who come to you, just about everyone qualifies, but it just made it more work, more things to get right, to do, and the paperwork. It basically doubled the size of the bankruptcy petition without really changing anything. So it made it more complicated for the attorney, but the reality is the people come in, they're just getting rid of their debts. They're getting a fresh start, and which is really, it's really good for them, and I'm really happy to help them.
So where do you see, the fallout of, this COVID-19? Once it's all over, where do you see the biggest problems lying? Is it individuals you think are going to be filing for bankruptcy, or do you see larger corporations getting in trouble? So
I think it's a good time to work for a larger corporation, I would say, because I think that the larger corporations have more cash. I mean, they're burning down their credit lines with the banks, which is, just like a warning and something to look at. But in general, they're trying to keep their employees and pay them. So you're better off these days if you're working for a large company. But I think the first people who are going to get burned, who are already getting burned, is the people in the hospitality industry. Hotels. I mean, I'm speaking to my clients. I ask them what the hotel's like. They say that there are 10 guests in the hotel. And a hotel can't survive with 10 guests in the hotel. So they're laying off all of their employees in hospitality, small businesses, stores, all of those types of businesses are laying off their employees. So what you're seeing is a lot of employees, they're the first wave of people who are starting to come in to file for a bankruptcy, and they generally can just get rid of their debts, get a fresh start. Pretty much in New York, if you're earning under about $55,000 for one person, you can qualify for Chapter 7 and get rid of your debts without much of a problem. But that's just a rough number. That's if you make more money, you very well still may qualify. Just more work has to be done. And of course, the more people in your household, you can make a lot more money than that and still qualify and get rid of your debts and get a fresh start. And just very, briefly, when you file, the benefit of what people want when they file for bankruptcy is the first step is the automatic stay. So the minute you file for bankruptcy, everything's electronic these days. I hit the button, it uploads to the bankruptcy court, and you get the debtor gets an automatic stay, which means that the collection agencies that are harassing them, the creditors, can't bother them anymore. So you get this like shield, and it protects you, and it gives the person some breathing space to try to figure out their financial situation. And then what happens next is you go to court. There's a trustee appointed. It's someone from the United States government's trustee's office. They usually their job is just to review my paperwork that I've worked with the client to make sure that the person qualifies financially, that they meet the requirements. They go through it. They ask them questions about their assets, and generally that's the end of the process, and you get rid of your debts and get a fresh start. So I think a lot of people think it's a scary thing. It's very difficult. It really isn't difficult. The work is really in the paperwork. If I do a good job, which I always try to do on every case, and I work hard on your case, and the paperwork is excellent when you go to court, it's really no big deal. and you get rid of your debts and get a fresh start. So that's the
Yeah,
first step.
there is kind of a stigma about bankruptcy. Do you still see that, or do you see a lot more people accepting that it's a reality these days?
You know, this is what's happened today. So you don't see much of a stigma, but generally people generally don't want to file for bankruptcy. It's not something you really want for most people. So unfortunately, what I see today is people get involved with like debt consolidation. And there's a whole industry of debt consolidation programs that debtors sign up with. So what happens is they think about bankruptcy, they go online, and then they see a website that says, you don't need bankruptcy, we'll do debt consolidation. So the problem is the debt consolidation, it's really, it becomes like a scam for a lot of these people. They come in, they're making payments every month, and the balance just doesn't go down. And then these companies convince them you should hire a lawyer to represent you in civil court, because a lot of creditors won't accept these debt consolidation programs. They don't want it. So one or two will sue the person anyway. So meanwhile, they're making payments. Then they get sued. And then these places, they kind of get you a lawyer that you've never met to represent you in civil court, just to keep the lawsuits from ending, keep them from getting a judgment against you for as long as possible, because you're making those monthly payments, and they're taking a lot of that as fees. So these debt consolidations programs take a lot of it in fees, and I find a lot of my clients saying the balance doesn't go down. And so they come to me after they spend thousands and thousands of dollars literally just thrown in the garbage, when they could have used that money for themselves and their family. I mean, that's what a lot of these debt consolidation companies are doing. They're taking money from desperate people who are desperate and looking for a solution. And they take it away from their families, and they waste it. So very often the people then come back to me, or come to me after they've thought about both options, and they end up filing bankruptcy anyway. So that's what you see. So people, but I tell you that a lot of people, they know that bankruptcy is just the best way to go, because you're getting rid of your debts. And look, if you're earning $30,000 a year and your debts are about $40,000, I mean, how are you going to pay that back with interest? What, at 20% interest? How are you going to support your child and pay that back? You're not a bad person. Just because you file bankruptcy doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you care about your family and you want to put them first. And so you take advantage of, this is the law. I mean, the bankruptcy code is there to help people. It's there for a reason. Congress passed it because they knew that people are suffering and you can't work. And, you know, I have clients, they're so stressed out from the phone calls, from the pay being garnished, the harassing phone calls at work, and they're stressed out. And that stress has a negative effect on people and on their health. And that's really, on today, especially these days when we're dealing with a real health crisis, where your health is so important in your ability to withstand this virus and the current health condition, that I think it's important for everyone really just to take a breath and recognize that you have to keep yourself up, your health up. And if bankruptcy helps you by not being stressed out, by not having to deal with all of this, I think it's something you should consider. And look, when people come to me, it's an open field. I don't decide that right off the bat that someone should file bankruptcy. I look at their financial situation, and there's some people I say, I don't think you should file bankruptcy. I wouldn't. If I were you, I wouldn't. That's my test. If I were you, would I file bankruptcy? And some people, the answer is no. And with some people, it's, you know, I'm not so sure. If you want the benefit of this bankruptcy, if you want to get rid of all this debt, then you should decide to do it. And some people, it just makes total sense off the bat, because, like I said, if you owe 40,000, and a lot of people owe 100,000 in credit card debt. So don't be embarrassed if you only owe, 20, 30,000 to people in much bigger debt than you. You'll never pay that off making 30,000 a year. That's just the law of mathematics. So it's just something to think about.
What does it look like, Jacob, if somebody is looking to file bankruptcy? What are the steps? What are the payments generally to a lawyer? Is it an upfront fee? Are you able to pay it off? Right.
So the first rule in a bankruptcy, and I tell this to people off the bat, small businesses off the bat, is that it's all about disclosure. Okay, the bankruptcy is a huge benefit to you. You'll get rid of all your debts. You'll get a fresh start. You won't have to worry about that at all. But in exchange, you have to disclose your financial situation to the bankruptcy court. Okay, and I say that off the bat because everyone has to understand that they have to provide tax returns, pay stubs, bank account statements. You have to provide that to the court. That's what the bankruptcy code requires. So, if that's not for you, that's fine. And you should know maybe bankruptcy is not right for you. For a small business, you have to understand they're also going to have to provide these financial documents. And, your tax return is going to be provided, whether it's as accurate as it should be or it isn't. It's going to have to be provided. Your bankruptcy will be as accurate as possible. The financial information in your bankruptcy will be 100% accurate, but you're also going to have to provide all your business records. So that's the first step, is reviewing all these financial records and determining whether or not they qualify for bankruptcy, whether bankruptcy is right for them, and whether the effort of doing that is worth getting rid of the debt. I mean, I think if you owe under $5,000, you definitely shouldn't. I don't think you should file for bankruptcy. So the next step is, once you determine whether that bankruptcy would help you, it's actually the client who decides whether they should file for bankruptcy. I mean, no one has to file for bankruptcy. I mean, even if you owe $1 million, you can lock yourself in your basement and don't answer the phone, and if you're not working, it may not matter. What can they do? Of course, the corollary of that is, if you're not working, now's the time to file bankruptcy, because your bankruptcy is much more likely to be approved. I mean, it's easier. It's an easier call if you're not working. Also, if you're not working, your income's low, it's a good time to file, because if you do get a job and your income's too high, you may not qualify for bankruptcy. Also, it's an easier case. I mean, the attorney doesn't have to spend as much time working on your case, so the attorney can charge you less. And that's something that's very important in these times, because there is something called when they look at your income to see whether you qualify for bankruptcy, there's a part of the bankruptcy that's called the means test, and it actually looks at the last 6 months prior to the month you're filing in. So it looks back at the last 6-month income to see whether, and it says that's your income. So look at the last, basically the last 7 months' income, and then you compare it to the average. It's a whole rigmarole. But basically, to see whether you qualify, it's looking back about 7 months. So the problem you may have now is, with some people who had very lucrative positions that no longer exist, they may find that if they want to file right now, they don't qualify, because their income was so high in the past that as of today, that's what the bankruptcy code looks at. So what they may have to do is actually wait up to 6 months or so before they actually file bankruptcy, because then that 7-month look-back period, their income is going to be much less, and it won't capture their employment history. And that's something I think that Congress really has to look at in terms of loosening, because it's not right. I mean, this was always something of a problem, but today, when people had good jobs and now through no fault of their own don't have those jobs, there's no reason to subject them to 6-7 months of being harassed by their creditors when it's really no fault of their own.
Right.
So basically, once the person has decided to file for bankruptcy, then you work with your attorney closely. It's a very close relationship, which is actually an issue these days of how you do that. Because that's what I enjoy. I enjoy having the clients come in. I like working with them, face to face, going through the papers, making sure everything's 100% correct, so that the case is as easy as possible and goes as easy as possible in court, which is what they want. They want no stress, and that's what I'm providing. So I like that personal relationship. How that's going to happen these days, I don't know. But that's the next step. What the next step has been, preparing the paperwork. It's usually a few hours of work, and then filing with the court. And then when you file with the court, you get a court date, usually 6 to 8 weeks away. That's what it's been historically. These days, I'm already getting emails from the court that cases are just going to be adjourned. I mean, because everyone's afraid to meet face to face. So the trustees reviewing these cases, who have to meet the debtor filing bankruptcy and ask them the questions that I go through in my office, basically, they're afraid to meet with the debtors, so they're pushing this off. And when these cases are actually going to be completed, it's difficult to say because no one knows where this goes. But that's the thing about bankruptcy. Even the questions they ask you in court, they're really not. There's no secret to them. I mean, it's generally the same questions again and again and again. So I go through with them, with the clients in my office, those pretty much those exact questions. It's kind of like having a test before the exam. I mean, it's totally legitimate. You know what the questions are. I mean, I've done thousands of these hearings, and I've helped thousands of people, and generally I know what the questions are. So you prepare the people. So this way, when they go to court, it's easy. They know what the questions are. They give an honest answer, and they honestly deserve the bankruptcy. They get rid of their debts.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot of questions. The questions that the bankruptcy court asks are known. The questions that are going to be coming from people down the line may not be known by them, but they should be known by yourself, Jacob, as a bankruptcy attorney who has obviously been helping a lot of people over the past 25 years. Jacob Silver, if somebody wants to reach out to you for help, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I'm always happy. I always try to answer the phone call myself. I'm always happy to give you a free consultation. I really work personally with you to help you understand your situation and also understand your options and understand if you do decide to file for bankruptcy, what it can and cannot do for you and how it can help you. And if you have any questions, the first thing to do is really to go to my website, which is www.silverbankruptcy.com. It's SILVER bankruptcy.com, and print out the bankruptcy checklist form. It's just a form that answers some questions about your situation. You fill it out, and it gives you a list of some documents so that I can review, so that I can give you the answers that you need. And then, after you've done that, you can call me. We'll set up a free consultation. It's all free until you decide whether you want to file for bankruptcy or not. And we talk about your situation, and we take it from there. You can also call me anytime.
Great stuff. And what is that number?
My number is 718-855-3834.
Great. And I'm sure all the information will be at silverbankruptcy.com as well. Well, Jacob, this has been a fascinating conversation. There's certainly a lot to think about these days. I know bankruptcy is a service that is very helpful for people, relieve the stress, as we've been talking about. It's going to be multiple stressors in the weeks, months, and possibly even years to come. So if anybody is listening in the New York area, reach out to Jacob Silver, silverbankruptcy.com. Jacob, thanks very much for being my guest on the Trust Factor Radio today.
Thank you. And to everyone, God bless, be well, and stay safe.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we will see you next time on the show.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com. To get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor, go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.